It's a thrill to be back. I would have paid to come last year. I didn't tell them that, though. You know, to come and work in a centre for the fulfilment of human potential, it was like, that's my dream, you know, that's what I love. And I think Kieran said it beautifully about, you know, most of us have just been brought up to believe that work's a bad thing. And I think it is easy to get into the whole kind of workaholic and all that kind of stuff. But I guess I am a messenger to say, well, work can also be intrinsically enriching and fulfilling. And it's something you can bring your heart and soul to and your spirit to. But most of us have not been taught, A, even that that's possible, and secondly, we've not been taught how to do it. So that's what I'm an advocate of, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today is, well, it is possible. How do you discover the work that you were born to do? And then this afternoon we're specifically going to look at probably the biggest issue for most of us, how do we get in our own way? Because I've realised that when many of us get inspired or connect with that sense of purpose, the first thing we don't do is say, yes, I'm the right person, this is the right time, and I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Most of us have our fears and our doubts and our anxieties, and we start thinking, who am I to do this? So this afternoon we're specifically going to be looking at our resistance to doing what we know we'd love to be doing and how do we overcome that. So this morning's about finding it, this afternoon's about overcoming your resistance to doing it and living it and being it. So I hope you're going to enjoy it. I'm looking forward to today. And happy birthday. Should have got a balloon, shouldn't we, saying one today. So it's just wonderful to be here. And I don't know why I seem to have a particular kind of affinity for coming to Ireland. I think I've been here 2 or 3 dozen times since my first book came out, and I just love coming here. I just feel kind of at home here too. So thank you for inviting me back. I'm thrilled to be here. So, you know, when people ask me, excuse me, I'm just on the tail end of a flu, so if I cough a bit, I'll just get some water and excuse me. When people often ask me what my job title is, I wonder if it sounds a bit pretentious, but I've started calling myself recently a work philosopher. I thought, that sounds grand, doesn't it? It's better than a life coach, better than an author. So I'll just give you the philosophy bit for a minute, you know, and I think the philosophy bit really is just that work can be an expression of your heart, soul and spirit. You know, that's the philosophy bit. And I think I do get to travel throughout the world. I've been to Africa a number of times, go to America, Canada, around Europe, Barbados. It's a tough life, but you know, I've surrendered to it. You know, this is my destiny. I have to go to wonderful places and work. Okay, I'll do that. And it just seems to be that this work ethic of work's tough, life's about suffering, work's a great place to suffer, get over it, that's what life's about. That seems to be fairly universal. You know, even in America, there's a lot of people, you know, they've got a much more positive ethic on the whole, but there's a lot of people that think, yeah, but I can't get paid to do something I love, can I? You know, so I think underneath it, there's just to some extent a belief in suffering that we all have. And just work becomes another way of playing out our belief that we need to suffer. So I suppose if I could inculcate another work ethic, it would be a work ethic of joy. That our work can be an expression of our joy. And perhaps the highest level of, you know, thinking about our work, and some of you, I'm sure, have already heard this, it comes from Khalil Gibran in The Prophet. He says, our work is our love made visible. Our work is our love made visible. So for me, that's the kind of highest vision of work, is that you just, through whatever your work is, really you're just loving people, you're loving the world, you're doing your bit to make a difference, and you get paid for it. You know, and on one level, it's actually very simple. But my personal experience and experience of working with thousands of other people is, yes, it's simple, but boy, do we get in our own way. You know, our conditioning, our beliefs, our cultures, you know, all the stuff we've learned as we grow up about who we are and how life should be. And, you know, in my experience, how many, I'll just ask the question, I probably know the answer, but let me ask the question. How many of us in this room grew up in a household where at least one person went off to work every day going, I'm so grateful I get to do this job, I love it, I can't wait to get to work? How many of us had one person in our household doing that? One, great. So there's usually 1 or 2 people, but on the whole it's the exception. Most of us have not had great role models of people loving what they do. You know, when I was in the corporate world, I left about 20 years ago, but when I was in the corporate world, thinking about leaving and following my heart and you know, starting my own little business, I didn't have any reference points, really. It's nobody in my family had ever done that. Everybody I knew was employed and doing things that they thought they should do. I had very little in my life to say there are other possibilities. So, one of the things I want to do today is kind of inspire you to new possibilities, but also teach you some of the practical stuff about how do you make those possibilities manifest in your own life, and what are the obstacles that you're likely to encounter as you do it, and how do you overcome them. Because I think, one of the great things that we can do for each other is whenever we've pioneered in our own life in any way, whenever we've taken new steps into a new way of being in our own life, one of the most generous things we can do is then kind of send back messages for other people saying, I didn't believe I could do this, but I've done it, this is what I've learnt, here's the pitfalls, here's the obstacles, here's the rewards, how do you do it for yourself? And I know, many people in this room, you're leaders in your own life and you want to help other people, And I think it's almost natural. I came across a lovely quote from Marianne Williamson, who some of you I'm sure know. She wrote a wonderful book called A Return to Love, and I can't remember the exact quote, but she said something to the effect of, the light within you must spread outwards. So the more that you kind of reach into yourself, the more you want to share that with other people. It's like the more you overcome obstacles in your life, the more you find a sense of fulfillment in your life. It's not like you want to say, I'm having a wonderful life, but I don't want to tell you about it. I think we're naturally generous. We get trained out of our generosity quite often through fear and lack and scarcity. But I think most of us, if we see a wonderful sunset, we don't go, nobody look, it's my sunset. On the whole, when we find something wonderful, we want to share it. So, I think A, discovering, and B, living and C, being successful with the work you were born to do is probably one of the most generous things you can do, because you'll probably have had to overcome some obstacles to do it. You'll have had to beat your own resistance. So whether you actually teach anybody else or not, in a formal setting, you will be an inspiration to other people. People will look at you and go, if they can do it, I can do it. So even if you don't formally teach, just by your existence and by the way that you are, you will positively impact other people. So far, I remember when my first book came out in about 1999, I remember one of the most frequently kind of asked questions I got from interviewers was, but isn't this just selfish? If everybody just did what they love, who'd clean the roads? Who'd do the sewers? And firstly I said, well, no, I don't think it's selfish, because I think when people are happy and inspired and joyful, that's a blessing to everybody. Just as our happiness can be infectious, so can our misery. If we're frustrated, unhappy, resentful, unfulfilled, that's going to have to leak out somewhere. I don't mean that to guilt trip anybody, but, that's going to, we're being a role model of that. And secondly, I also think, in answer to that question that I got asked a lot, secondly, in my experience, there are people that are passionate about so many different things. So whatever you're passionate about, that's the thing for you to focus on. There are other people that are passionate about engineering or cleaning the roads or having clean environments or whatever it is. So I don't think there's going to come a day when there isn't jobs that people want to do. I think people will just naturally gravitate to what they were born to do. And there's two levels to it. One is, I think there is sometimes something that we are really born to do and we feel that sense of destiny. This quotation, I hope you can read it okay, I'll read it out in a minute. But this quotation I think I probably came across about 15 years ago, and it's been like a guiding quotation in my life. It says, when you are inspired by some great purpose or some extraordinary project, all your thoughts break your bonds, your mind transcends limitations, and your consciousness expands in every direction. Dormant forces, faculties and talents become alive in you, and you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. I just love that idea that when you're inspired, dormant forces, faculties and talents become alive in you, and you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. So another element of the work we want to do is, I don't think most of us have got a clue how amazing we are. We've got a sense of identity that's very limiting. Apparently, by the time most of us have reached adulthood, we'll have received something like 9 times as many negative messages about ourselves as we will positive messages about ourselves. Who do you think you are? You're nobody special. Just get back in your box. Yeah, okay, get back. Don't have ideas above your station, whatever it is. We're taught to think little on the whole. So one of the most courageous things, I think, of this journey is to also think more highly of yourself. You're not as bad as you think you are. In fact, you're a lot better than you think you are. So part of this, and we're going to talk about this, is, who do we think we are? But I just love this quote. It's been a guiding quote in my life. And I think one of the first stumbling blocks many of us encounter is that we think, well, when I'm really inspired about something, then I'll follow it. But what we forget is that sometimes we have to initiate that sense of inspiration. Because, I don't know what your sense of the kind of anatomy of inspiration is, but I like the idea, not that, many of us have this idea that maybe one day, if you're lucky, inspiration will strike you. It's like the muse, and she's capricious, and she may or may not plant an idea into your consciousness, but there's nothing you can do about it. So I don't think you can control inspiration. I think ultimately it is a mystery, but it's a mystery you can align yourself with, and you can make yourself available to. How do you do that? Just a couple of ideas, ways that I teach people to connect to their sense of inspiration is, firstly, kind of know what inspires you. But we need to know, what are our sources of inspiration? Where do we go to fill up? When we're in the presence of either, music or teaching or people or nature, what is it that uplifts us? Because I think we need to know what uplifts us. Because the second thing then is, obviously we need to put ourselves in the presence of that fairly regularly, but actively, not just wait for it to happen. Because I think what we often don't realise is we can initiate that sense of inspiration. Just give you a couple of examples, or a couple of quotes. Somerset Maugham, the writer, somebody apparently asked him one day, they said to him, do you write when inspiration strikes, or do you write at particular times every day? And his answer was, I sit down to write at 9:30 every morning. Fortunately, inspiration strikes me at 9:30 every morning. So what he meant was he was a professional. And here's the crunch bit I think that we need to get is, sometimes we don't feel like doing our work or turning up to whatever our life's about. But when we turn up to do it, the inspiration starts to flow. And that's the thing that many people never quite get. It's like they're waiting to be inspired rather than choosing to be inspired or choosing to turn up. So just a few kind of ideas about, well, what are the characteristics of the work we were born to do? How do you know what you're looking for in a way? So these are just a few ideas I've got. What I say is, in the traditional sense, it may not even feel like work, and I'm going to talk more about this, but some people might miss it completely, because, if you've grown up with a work ethic that says, as long as you're not enjoying it, as long as you're suffering, as long as some pain and boredom involved, that's real work and you get paid for it. If that's your idea of what work is, then it's probably not even in your consciousness that you can do something you love, that you're joyful, and that you'd pay to do it, but you get paid to do it. So, the work we're born to do doesn't necessarily feel like work in that traditional sense. Does that make sense? It's like, it will feel different. If you've only ever done work you haven't enjoyed, then it won't feel like the work you've done before necessarily. And you might not even, you might miss it. You think, well, this isn't work. Because so many of us have got such a negative association to work that we can't even see something that we love as being work. It's like, well, we just have to keep that as a hobby. Or it's something I volunteer with. It couldn't be work that I then get paid for. Secondly, I believe it's about each of us having a unique contribution. I personally believe that every single person has unique gifts and talents, that came with our creation. We were given them, and our job is to discover them and little by little reveal them and share them. I think the world is made brighter by each of our contribution of our own unique gifts. Whether that's in your family, whether that's in your community, whether that's in your workplace, just bring it what you uniquely have to bring. And thirdly, you develop an equality of head and heart. What do I mean by that? I come at the work that I do from two different angles. I think I've been involved in the kind of spiritual and new age world for a long time, and I came from and then left behind, but now find myself going back into the corporate and business world a lot more. And my kind of theory is, well, a lot of spiritual people need to become more entrepreneurial and business-like, and a lot of entrepreneurial and business people need to find more heart and inspiration and creativity in what they do. So depending on where you lie in the spectrum, you might have a different need. So, if you've got fantastic gifts and talents and, people love what you do, but you're broke because you're afraid to ask for money, then you have one set of needs. You know, if you're working in a corporation earning a load of money but are totally unhappy, frustrated and have no sense of meaning and purpose, then you have a different set of needs. So to me it's coming at the same goal but from different angles. So for me it's not about either or, and sometimes I think, you know, say in the business world we don't value heart, and the spiritual world doesn't always value good thinking and strategies. So for me it's about bringing the two together appropriately. So that I think we become very potent people when we're both inspired and caring and heartfelt, but we're also, you know, got good thinking and know what to do to make things happen. You know, it's like having 130 people here. It's a lovely idea, but if you didn't do the practical things that were necessary to let people know it was happening. So that's what I mean. It's like do something inspiring and then know how to find the audience for it or create the audience for it. And then the last two is, I think it's a constant evolution. You know, even if you find your unique gifts and talents, it's like an apprenticeship, and I think it can also almost become like a lifelong apprenticeship. You just discover that there's more and more of you. I believe in a way all human beings are like a tissue box. You know, you take one tissue out and underneath you'll find there's another one. You take that one out and there's another one. It's like we keep unwrapping ourselves. We just discover more and more of what we're capable of being and doing. Like that quote from Patanjali about, you know, you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. That's that kind of bit for me. It's like, you know, we can spend a whole lifetime really just discovering who we are and the impact we have and the way that people see us and the hearts that we can touch or whatever we're going to be doing. And fifthly, you know, we work for love and money, because I think one of the major beliefs, and I'll ask you, I'll run these two beliefs past you and see if you can relate to them. But I think most of us have grown up with the belief, number one, either that in order to earn money in the world you have to sell out on your heart and creativity and your love to some extent. That's just the way it is. You have to do that to earn money. And that's the prevailing belief that most of the world lives by. And then the second belief is, okay, I can do something I really love. If I want to be really defiant, I can do something I really love, be inspired by it, do something really meaningful to me, but the price I'll have to pay is probably, you know, not much economic success. I'll probably never earn much money out of it. So for many of us, it's this dilemma. It's like, well, do we sell out on our deeper self to earn money, or do we contact our deeper self but then be financially poor? So it's like the belief that you can either be financially rich or spiritually rich, but you can't have both. And my work is very much about the third way, which is about saying, well, actually, you know, I think our kind of financial riches can often come from our spiritual richness. The more we discover of our own abilities, talents, and ability to love people, that's how we get to succeed, and that's how we get to generate income. So it's not about either or, it's about and. And I think what often happens is, I think beneath that is perhaps just a belief generally about sacrifice, that you can't have it all, you have to make sacrifices. So the dilemma is, do you sacrifice the love for the money or the money for the love? And my belief is you don't have to sacrifice either. You can have both. You know, and I think one of the things that we often underestimate is the power to change within where we are. You know, it sounds funny, but I think we sometimes think it's easier to leave our job than to change within our job. And I think it's a delicate balance to know how much we can be more of ourselves. And I think sometimes it's more about personal courage to be authentic than we realise. You know, I talk to a lot of people that go, oh, you know, I coach them and say, well, could you do this at work? Oh, no, I could never do that. They'd think I was crazy. And I said, well, how do you know they're going to think you're crazy? Well, I don't know, actually. You know, I just think they would. And then they go and do something different, and they realise they actually get a very positive response. So I think what a lot of people crave is just more authenticity, more people being real. So, you know, I would coach people to be authentic where they are. Because, you know, a lot of people say, well, at the moment I feel like I'm being very unauthentic, but I'm going to leave and one day I'm going to turn up and something new and I'm going to be really authentic. And my challenge to them is always, well, how can you be more authentic right where you are? Because I think it's easy to put things in the future. You know, when I change my environment, when the kids are grown up, whatever, then I'll be me. And my challenge is always, well, how can you be you now? You know, every day is that opportunity. I don't think there's going to be one big shift that happens one day and we're all going to be different. I'm with the Tao Te Ching that says we achieve the great task by a series of small acts. So I think it's about changing, transforming right where we are in each moment, if you like. And then sometimes that leads us to bigger changes, like then maybe we want to change our job, but we're being more of who we are. Okay, so how do you discover the work that you were born to do? You know, it's all very lovely talking about what's possible. How do you find what's possible for you? So I'm going to present you now with 9 different ways that I've found over the last 15 years that people come to discover what they really want to do. Some of it's come from my own personal research of how I've come to find the work that I was born to do, and then working with hundreds and thousands of other people to help them, you know, find what they really want to do. So basically I'm going to give you 9 ways, and then I'll get you to do a couple of little exercises around some of them so that you can meet some other people and explore things. So here they are. Way number 1. You know, the most obvious way, and maybe in a world to come it will be the way that most people discover the work they were born to do. It will be what inspires you. You know, part of my vision is, you know, I'd love to live in a world where you go to school and people, you know, everyone says to each other, you know, what inspires you? You know, as a kid, we're asked, what inspires us? We're encouraged to discover what inspires us, because I think that's where we really find it. So, you know, when anybody says to me, either in my coaching practice or, you know, at talks or anything, they say, well, I'm bored with what I'm doing, I don't know what I'd like to do next. My first question is always, so what would inspire you? You know, and it's just such a simple but such a powerful question, and I think it's the question that points us at the work we're born to do. It will be the thing, it will be born of inspiration. You know, and for me that's where it's different from, say, career coaching. You know, and I'm not saying career coaching is wrong, but, you know, career coaching is about looking at what have you done, what are you good at, what are your qualifications, what's your employability, what's the market doing. And I've always kind of struggled to wonder why I didn't totally resonate with that. And for me, it's just because it misses out this whole other dimension, which is of our own level of inspiration, our own level of, you know, emotional connection, if you like, or even spiritual connection. And so this is it. You know, basically, it's the most simple way of discovering it is just to track your own sense of inspiration. Now, if you're in touch with that, brilliant. If you're not in touch with it, just be willing to have it as a new guiding kind of thought and question in your life. Because I think we're often very quick to dismiss our inspired ideas. So I think there's 2 things. One is, you know, like we talked about earlier, knowing how to nurture your own sense of inspiration generally. And secondly is to cherish and maybe even just get a notebook and really cherish and record the inspired ideas you get. Because most of us are pretty good at talking ourselves out of them pretty quickly. So the first way that we find what we're born to do is just, you know, listen to ourselves. I'm a great believer that a part of us already knows. It's not like it's a mystery to us. The answers are already within us. On one level, we don't need anybody outside us. All we need to do is maybe people outside us help us remember and remind us and hold up mirrors to us. But I believe the answers are already in you. You know, I think I knew as a kid what I wanted to do when I grew up. I just got talked out of it and talked myself out of it. You know, what I'm doing today felt like what I thought as a kid I wanted to do. But kind of, you know, it inspired me as a kid. But then I looked around as I was growing up and going, well, everyone else seems just to do jobs and earn money. Maybe I just should do that. I'll just fit in line and do what everybody else does. So, you know, very simple. You know, but I don't want to make it sound simplistic because it's so different from the way most of us have been brought up. But just to keep asking ourselves that question. So if I can offer you, you know, just one guiding question to keep asking yourself, the question would be, how would you inspire yourself next? Just keep asking yourself that question and then listening to and trusting the answers that come to you. I'm not saying you have to act on it every time, but just keep asking yourself that question. How would you inspire yourself next? Second way we discover the work we want to do is behind our resistance. You know, so what I was just describing, you know, about having the idea and then doing a hatchet job on myself, that was just my resistance kicking in. And for most of us, many of us, that resistance kicks in a heartbeat. We don't even realise we've done it. It just seems very logical. It just seems to make sense. Of course I can't do it. I'll prove to you I can't do it. Here's 4 reasons why I know I can't do it. You get to be right, but don't get to be very happy. But that's the second way. And what I mean in terms of the work we're born to do, often I find people come to the work they were born to do because it's the thing they most keep talking themselves out of. They keep coming up with reasons why they could never do it.